Strength Reversed. It's Amy. Thank you so much for watching today. This is the next installment of my Light Seers Sundays series where I go through the major arcana in the Light Seers deck and I compare it to the Muse Tarot that I'm trying to get to know, and then I will do the spread for that card that comes in the Tarot for Light Seers book as a way just to hold myself accountable and familiarize myself with both of these decks. The Muse Tarot is a newer deck to me, and the Light Seers is one of my favorites. Today's card is Temperance, card number 14. I love Temperance. It's difficult to explain this card in words. It's just kind of a feeling, and it's one of those, I have this a lot in tarot where I understand the card on a certain level. It's like a lot of information that I have trouble putting into words, but there's a vibe, there's a feeling in the card that is multifaceted and it's very, not complicated, but intricate. And so it's difficult to explain it, but I will attempt to explain it. I guess the major keyword for this card is balance. And that does make sense, but I think it's very simplistic to just say balance. It's a good starting point though. It's so much more than that. I love that in the Thoth decks, Temperance is called art. That's a good metaphor for this card. It's putting together, it's not just a balance of opposites, but it's putting lots of different components together, and there's an alchemy involved, and it creates something new, and you can't quite put your finger on how it created something new. It just does, and whatever it creates is more than the sum of its parts. Another good keyword for this is flow, and I decided I'm not really going to show the Rider-Waite version. You can get that card if you want to, because I am thinking of that in my head. But being in the flow and being in flow is a good way to describe the feeling of this card when that angel is juggling a lot of different things, a lot of different elements, a lot of different parts of ourselves, and it's just working, and you can't really think too much about it. Otherwise, it's all gonna fall apart. It's like if you think about juggling, you can't do it, right? If you think about riding your bike, then it gets more difficult. And there are lots of different dualities in this card, the sun and the moon, also on the Rider-Waite deck, and somewhere here he has a tattoo right here of a triangle inside of a square, which is the union of, you know, spirit and matter, and different forms. It's, you know, the inner, the outer, the above, the below, the spiritual and the mundane, and all of those things coming together to make something that's even more more complete than just those two things. And that unknown way of explaining how that happens, I think, is spirit. It's that energy, that mystery that we just have to have faith is there. It's important to remember that when things are balanced, it doesn't mean that things are still. Because this is an even number, it's card 14, tarot does that thing where odd numbers tend to be more active and even numbers tend to be more passive or receptive, and there's just an exhalation or a stillness in this card. But sometimes it's easier to balance when things are moving, but not necessarily moving forward, because in the Temperance card, the angel is pouring water and we don't really know which way the water's going. It's like time. It can go this way, it can go that way, and there's just that balance there, and the sweet spot is the middle road. And I think that's what I'm going to title this video, is the middle road. And that mystery of how we keep ourselves on our path, where we are taking into consideration what we need in our physical lives. And, you know, we're here, we're matter, we're part of the mundane world, but also squeezing in like where our intuition is guiding us and where spirit is calling us, or bringing that meaning into our everyday life, I think is a good way to think about temperance that I really like. So we have in the Light Seers card, the sun and the moon, we have that symbol of matter and spirit, and this angel conjuring things up. In one of the books I was reading about how angels are symbolic of taking something from our unconscious and bringing it to our consciousness, like they're messengers, they announce things, and also they're just guardians, and our guides have a way of nudging us without being pushy, because if you work with guides, you know, sometimes they just kind of stare at you and they're not going to interfere unless you ask for it. And, you know, when we have what we put into something, there's that mysterious part that we have to have faith that something is happening behind the scenes that our angel can remind us of, that we might not be able to see, but we have to have faith that it's there. And then that all works together and something weird happens, and then poof, temperance. In the reversed aspect, temperance can tell us a lot about that movement and, you know, temperance not having to be still. So sometimes if this comes in the reversed, it can mean like, don't do anything, just do nothing. And that can be your answer, because we always want to stay on this middle path. And sometimes if the shit hits the fan and the emotions are high, the best thing to do is not go further down the spiral, right? We go to not the opposite extreme, but we maybe correct and just don't do anything or don't try to act. And then sometimes when things are stagnant, we need to shake up the snow globe. And that might be what temperance is asking us to do. Don't force things. So the opposite extreme might not be necessary, but either get moving when we're stuck or don't do anything when things are too frenetic and busy. Also, in the reversed aspect, the temperance movement is what led to prohibition. So if we don't, if we're too fixated on what things should look like, sometimes things go off the rails and we get into this negative place. I have a teacher, I have a group that I meet with, and the teacher I've known for many, many years talks about an airplane pilot only being on course 10% of the time, and the rest of the time is just correction, getting back on course. And that's a good way to think about our spiritual lives, because we want that middle road. And when things are getting out of whack one way or the other, we need that balance where we're bringing ourselves back without beating ourselves up, so that we're on that middle path. When I think about temperance, a good way to remember is like the temperance card, tempering water and wine to make the wine not so potent, or to make the water not so boring, or tempering steel, or tempering justice with mercy, or tempering eggs or chocolate, where you don't have those extreme temperatures, because the extreme temperature will cook the eggs or scald the chocolate, and you just want to make it gradual, the middle road, if you will. This is the Muse Tarot, and it's a very different card. We have the sun here and the moon in all of its phases. And I like the idea of the moon phases. This is a very feminine card anyway, but I think connecting, especially women who, can connect to cycles, lunar cycles, monthly cycles, if you are connected to that cycle, that sometimes at different phases of that cycle, things can be drastically different. We can see things differently. Our bodies experience things differently. We have different insights, and sometimes we shouldn't act until maybe we've let that percolate. But I like the idea of all of those different phases and parts of ourselves being integral to the experience, and taking all of that information, because really when we feel something in our body or we feel something energetically that it's off, it's really just information for us to take action on, to decide what we're going to do. And I just like that, like playing with there's no part of ourselves that's wrong or that we should be mad about, because it's all just information that we can integrate, and then it's something deeper. So I like this idea of her being close to the sun, like in the light of day in our regular lives, and then there's something underneath. And Chris-Anne called this a cauldron of, basically things get, to me this looks very uterine, but things get mixed up in this cauldron to make something else. And she also talked about healing being a kind of alchemy, which I really, really liked. She said turning life lessons into gold. That's the alchemy. And if you look at the Temperance card between death and the devil, between two super terrific, awesome, fun cards, when you have the death card and that major change or something, some aspect of yourself that has fallen away, you can, get to this place of temperance where you're correcting your course and you're integrating all of this and taking those little gold nuggets as you heal. And it's also been described, temperance has been described as the calm before the storm of the devil, where you have these gold nuggets that you've alchemized, and you can take them with you so that you have this memory, because all of this information from the subtle realms, it is subtle. And when you get into a place of like the devil, like what's controlling me, or all these details, or I feel like, there's some sort of addiction, or there's some sort of yuckiness going on, it's really easy for those little gold nuggets to disappear and for us to forget, because they are so subtle. But I really like, taking the patience and the crap and the good stuff and all the stuff, and together there are always those little shining spots, kind of like in the tower where the squirrel was looking up at all these beautiful sparks. They're in the grossness, that's where you get like those little pieces of gold that have come from something that is ineffable. You can't really explain how this works. You just know there's some magical ingredient from the universe that makes it all work. That is a ramble. I'll tell you a story of good temperance energy. This summer I went to Lexington, Kentucky, and I brought my son, who's 15, and his two friends. So there's like 3 14, 15-year-old boys in a car and me, and we went to tour like historical places and stuff. And when you're in a 12-hour car ride with 3 teenage boys, you say things that you never knew you'd have to say, like, why did you bring firecrackers, and let's not light them in the car, and stuff like that. So we get there and walking around, it's some, battlefield, and minding my own beeswax, and I get a text message from my principal. who says, are you gonna quit if I give you this awful, crappy schedule? And I just, I was hot. It was, we were hungry, we were kind of cranky, and I had this message in front of me like, oh my God, next year is going to be awful, and I knew this would happen, and blah, 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 and ranting. And the temptation was to fire off a way too honest response to my principal, but the energy of temperance came over me, and I was like, you know what, let me just not do anything, because emotions are high, and if I add fuel to that, that's not balance. So I kind of brought it back, let things percolate, and I was like, I'm not in town, let me get back to you. And it ended up not even being a thing, so it ended up kind of working itself out, which is lovely temperance energy. Thank you, teacher guides, because that would have been a craptastic schedule. But that taking a pause and correcting the course is temperance energy. Okay, I'm going to flip this around and do the, it's just a 3-card spread, and we don't need the temperance card for it. So I'll just lay out the cards with the light seers, and then I'll show the same cards with the Muse Tarot, and we'll see how that goes. Inner Harmony spread. So card 1 is excess. Where am I out of balance? Show me the excess. Card 2 is deficiency. Where am I out of balance? Show me the deficiency. And card 3 is harmony. What are the opportunities for spiritual growth in this imbalance? What actions can I take to find inner peace and establish balance? Okay, I'm gonna just pick excess, deficiency, and harmony. I don't always pick cards like that, but I am today. Okay, so excess, 9 of Swords. So this is where I'm at, what I have excessive energy doing, where I'm out of balance. And no kidding. Another thing that my teacher has told me, Mirabai is her name, and she's phenomenal. I've worked with her for over 20 years, since before I had my son. And it's been really helpful and amazing work. But she said, pray to increase light and decrease the details. And I think that's what's coming to me. Focusing too much on the details really is a projection forward. And when we're pouring that temperance, back and forth, like the angel is doing, that can go in either direction. Let's see. No, I always pick inspiration as the, here we go, 9 of Voices. And we see a person who is, has all these cords attached. I'm just seeing these cords, and it's almost like they're dreaming and they have a lot going on. A lot of attachments that they can't even let go, even while they're sleeping, and how much distress it's causing. And I get a feeling when I look at this card of just exhaustion, like not being well rested. In the Light Seers swords have all these birds, which, represent air and thoughts and messages, and they're all in a tangle up there. One of the things that I work on constantly is feeling like I have to figure everything out, and I have to figure out this grand riddle that my life is, and I just want my guides to tell me the answer, and they just don't. And sometimes I get really frustrated and fed up with my guides, and I'm like, just tell me the answer. Like, what do I have to do? Do I have to, eat more fruit and vegetables? Like, what do I have to do? And I'll do it so I can be done trying to figure out the riddle. And that idea of increasing the light and decreasing the details is something that is really reassuring to me. So excess of details, or worry about the details. Okay, this is deficiency. Ace of Wands. That's kind of a bummer to be deficient in the Ace of Wands energy, but I guess that's true. I have for a long time felt almost like I'm not really putting a lot of energy into things that keep me feeling inspired. And it's because at this point, I'm really not sure what it is that inspires me anymore. I mean, tarot, yes, but what else? I'm not sure. Here's the Ace of Inspiration. Is that an eyeball? No, it's not. And I love the flow of energy in both of these cards, kind of to the crown or to the third eye. And I really like seeing the plants, even though this is more of a fiery card. The growth and the nourishment here, and that's the increase of the light, isn't it? That I have to, decreasing the details and increasing the light. This is what I'm deficient in. I'm still working on, I guess, finding what I'm passionate about. And I always think, being a teacher, but that is fulfilling to me still and worth it to me still, but there's something else that I'm being called to. Just tell me, what is it? And then harmony. What are my opportunities for spiritual growth in this imbalance? What actions can I take to find inner peace and establish balance? Five of Cups. Oh God, I guess. This is that card of, not crying over spilt milk and what are you going to focus on? And you still have a lot of things left in this cup and blah, 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 blah. I guess not letting the energy, where am I putting my energy? Which is more of a Six of Pentacles kind of feeling. But let me find this card in the Muse. That's so pretty. What is she clutching? Is that the moon? Okay, so I'm kind of seeing maybe this poked her and she sprung a leak or something. And her life force is leaking out, but she still has everything she needs. She still has her intuition. She still has, she's not drowned. She's not drowned yet, right? She can still, she's really in a beautiful place, but she's focused on this one little tiny little, I guess, tiny details. I don't know what to say about these cards. What actions can I take to find inner peace and establish balance? I get the feeling with these cards that, with the Five of Cups, that it's I don't like to say the glass half empty, glass half full nonsense, but focusing on like giving more energy to the energy that's being drained instead of, you know, putting energy where it's flowing. That's what I'm trying to say. My energy, and this has come up for me before. I have to put my energy where it flows, and everything else can just fall away. I got that specifically in a meditation, and that's what popped into my head. Putting my energy where it flows and not trying to fight against that and worrying about trying to fix where it's not flowing. Ta-da! I'm a genius. Okay. Well, let's turn this back around. I'm going to pick next week's card. Okay, it took me a minute on that last card, but I think I got it. So I'm going to go through the deck, and whatever the first major card is that I come to, that's the card for next week. So let's see. Justice. Fab. Another balance card. That'll be interesting to see how that works out. Okay. I will see you next week, hopefully, for Justice. Thank you for joining me, and if you've stuck through this, hopefully you put it on fast forward, but I will talk to you next week. Bye.